Welcome to the Excel Pod. To the Untied podcast, where we unravel the knots of life with faith, wisdom, and encouragement, because together we're here to untie from tradition and embrace truth through biblical teaching. We are so glad that you are here joining us today for another episode of the Untied podcast. This is season 4, episode 4, and we're going through the Sermon on the Mount this season, looking at the words of Jesus and how they can impact us in such a great way. And I know that I have had such a great time studying with you, Corey, and we hope that you have, as listeners and viewers, been enjoying this study as well, looking at this sermon so far. And today we're looking at the salt and light section here in Matthew chapter 5. And so I'm very much looking forward to that and to our conversation, just hanging out together. We love hanging out together. We love hanging out with you. And so we hope that if you have been blessed by this podcast and like it, we hope that you will like it, share it, subscribe it, and share it with others, and help this podcast to grow, as well as all of the other podcasts on the Excel Pod Network. That's a part of the greater work of Excel Still More Inc. To check that out, you can go to excelstillmore.net, and you can see everything that we offer in this work, and we just hope that it will bless you in a wonderful, wonderful way. And so as we get into this, as we typically do, Corey and I are great friends. We just like to talk about stuff, and so we're going to do that now and get into our first segment here, What's Been Cooking, and then we'll get into our studies. So, Corey, what's going on, man?
Hide it under a bushel.
Oh, brother. No.
I'm going to let it. I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll get to that later.
All right, folks. So let's just go ahead and extend this warning out. Corey told me this is a singing session. So you may need to dial the volume down or just ready yourself, because I think if there was a jukebox, there's no quarter to play, and it's just going to play at random, and we'll see where this takes us. So that's your warning.
Hey, we're filming this or recording this or whatever you're going to call it. We're filming like it's the 1920s. I don't know why I said film. We're filming this.
We're filming.
Yeah, let's use our transatlantic voices. We're recording this on Monday, so it'll be a little late for some of you, but it's never too late to celebrate. Do you know what holiday is today?
No.
Today is National Respect the Lima Bean Day.
Really?
Yes, better known to those of us in the true South as butter beans. And some of our greatest moments were sitting on a front porch with a big basket of butter beans, helping our grandma or our mama or whatever, and learning from them the wisdom that was passed down while we were taking care of all of the chores from the gardens and all that. But anyway, so tonight would be a good night to fix you some cornbread and a big pot of butter beans, and throw a little ham hock in there, and it'd be larping.
So apparently this is a big deal. I have not heard of this.
Well, I hadn't either until this morning.
Oh, well, okay. Then that makes me feel at least a little bit better.
I thought every day was Respect the Lima Bean Day until today. I found out it's just today. So
I wonder if there's festivals that are devoted to this.
I don't know, but I'm fixing to Google it, because there's bound to be a lima bean festival somewhere.
There's probably a festival for just about anything, I would think. So I know that there are festivals where you throw cow patties. I know there are festivals that you're spitting out watermelon seeds. If there are festivals for that, there has to be one for our beloved lima bean.
Well, this is funny because I never would have suspected that there would be a butterbean festival where there is a butterbean festival at. Pinson, Arizona
Really?
has a butterbean. Oh no, that was just mistyped there. Pinson, Alabama. That sounds a little bit better.
Okay.
Pinson, Alabama, which is near Birmingham, has a butterbean festival. And let me see if I can figure out when it is. When is the butterbean? October the 4th through the 5th. So it's not on the National Respect the Lima Bean Day, but
That's interesting. Well, if there is anybody who is tuning in and listening to our podcast and you have attended this beloved event, we would love to hear from you so that you could enlighten us to this, for us, a new thing. Now, beans and cornbread, that's not, that's something that we have eaten, of course, all of our lives. So that's not outside of our realm here, but this National Day for the Lima Bean or its festival, we would like to know more. So
have you ever heard of the Carolina chocolate drops?
I have heard of them, yes.
The Carolina chocolate drops, for those who do not know, are a old-time string band. It's a cool story. Some students that in college had to write a paper on something. I don't know if it was music history of this individual in particular, but it ended up bringing them to an old man who for years gone by had played clawhammer banjo in an old string band, and they got so into it, realized that it was a music that was a big part of their heritage, and it was slowly dying out. So they sing all these old time string bands style songs, and then they'll even sing some modern like R&B and jazz kind of songs. They'll do it bluegrass style or string band style, which is pretty good. But anyway, they have a song called Cornbread and Butter Beans. Cornbread and butter beans, and you across the table, eating them beans and sharing love as long as I am able. Hoeing corn and cotton too, and when the day is over, ride the mule and cut the fool and love again all over. So, anyway, you can look that one up after you get through listening to the podcast. Carolina chocolate drops, cornbread, and butter beans.
I think you have mentioned them before. That's the only reason I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Maybe last season or something, but I don't know.
They've got a line in there that says, wearing shoes and drinking booze, it goes against the Bible.
Oh, really?
A necktie will make you die and cause you lots of trouble. Streetcars and whiskey bars and kissing pretty women. Women, yeah, that's the end of a terrible beginning. I'm not saying I agree with their theology. I'm just saying that's the song.
Well, there it is.
That's right.
Ties are kind of like capes. You ever seen the movie Incredibles? We watched that growing up with the boys, and there was a big deal with capes. No capes, because if you were flying in front of an airplane, your cape could get caught, and then you get sucked into the engine and you die. I wonder if a tie is the same way.
Yeah, I like Rafe Hollister's line on the Andy Griffith. He said, I never liked wearing them things since the first time I saw a man hanged. So it's a different knot, but it's kind of a similar concept. So anyhow.
It is a different knot. They both cinch.
Yeah, we're kind of getting off topic, but anyway, hide it under a bushel, no.
We're talking about light and salt today, folks. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know.
This is the week that we're having dinner and devotion, and we're gonna make a smoked meat offering this week. The altar fires will be burning as we cook about 12 pork shoulders and feed the crowds, feed the multitudes. So
I actually cooked a brisket Saturday night
really?
Yesterday. It wasn't a full brisket. It was just half of it. That's how we got it. And man, I came in yesterday morning. I get here to the building about 6 o'clock every Sunday morning. And so I went and checked it right before. It'd been going all night long, and just had it at 2:25, I think. And got there in the morning, checked it before I left. Everything was looking good, about 170 internal or so. And I thought, all right, this is going to really work out well. Nice slow cook. And my wife checked it right before she left. Got here at the building at 8. And then I went to check it, or she checked it probably 7:45, 7:30 probably. And so we had a devotional at the nursing home up here. So I thought, well, I'm going to go check it right before that. So I went and checked it. My smoker was off. So had some error code, which I didn't know what. You That's can turn good. It all off and turn it back on. It's fine. But, oh my goodness, the smoker's completely cold. So it'd been like that for a little bit. And, of course, the brisket was cooling down. So I just went, I thought, I'm just going to put it in the oven. So I did, and it turned out perfect by the time we got here, and pulled it out at about 199 and didn't have any time to rest. I was like, well, it is what it is, and was pretty good. So I was very thankful, because I never know. If I cook on Sunday like that, I never know how it's going to turn out. It's either way too done or not enough, because you don't have time to check it. But but I think I'm gonna do some ribs tonight for us. We've got a baseball game at home, and sometimes it's really easy for me to cook ribs, because they can just cook and be done by the time we're done. So been a minute since I've had some, so I'm looking forward to that.
Well, Friday, it was very pretty here, so I wanted to smoke. I just sent you some pictures. I don't know if you want to or can, but you can look at them if you don't want to share them. So I did 2 Boston butts. I did one for me and then one for a buddy of mine that has done me a lot of favors here lately. And so I cooked him a Boston butt. And then I did, Melody wanted me to smoke a meatloaf. So I smoked a meatloaf, which I don't know if you've ever had smoked meatloaf, but if you like meatloaf, you add smoke to it and it's going to be better, And then we had a bag of, I was trying to think of some kind of side that I could do. And, so I just took a bag of frozen broccoli florets and put them in the pan. And then I took probably about, I don't know, it was probably 2 pounds of bacon, and I cut it up in little bits and mixed all that together. And I put some garlic powder, and I sprinkled some of my barbecue rub on there, and then just let that smoke. And, I'm not a huge fan of broccoli, but when it tastes like smoke and bacon, it's really good. And so anyway, so we ate the broccoli and bacon and the meatloaf on Friday night, and then we had the Boston butt to eat on the rest of the weekend. There's the meatloaf after I pulled it out of the smoking pan and put it in a regular dish. And nice. We did something different too with the meatloaf. We layered the meatloaf in there, and then we put a layer of cheese, and then we put a layer of meat again, and so it's cheesy meatloaf. It was pretty good. So,
are you just catching
grease
down there?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. If
I just put some pans down there so that my bucket didn't run over.
Gotcha.
So.
Gotcha, man. That looks good.
Oh, it was larping. But anywho, so that's what's been cooking this past weekend. So,
well, that all looks pretty good. I'll have to start taking some pictures and throwing them up here as well.
Well, we take pictures mostly to send to the broccoli was good. It really was. We take pictures and we send to my 2 sons that no longer live at home to make them want to come home and visit us occasionally. So it's just, all it is it's like spinnerbait. It's a lure trying to get them to come in. So
the shinier that spinner is, the more it moves.
That's right.
The more it draws.
Right. So anyway.
Sometimes you got to change the color. it ultimately works.
Yep.
That's
So
funny.
we've got some brown meatloaf, and we've got some chartreuse broccoli, and we're just trying a little bit of everything. So
Well, I need to try that broccoli. We'll just cook the broccoli in the oven, and with some garlic and salt and some little bit of oil on there, and I really like it like that. And I grew up hating broccoli. I mean, hating it. But it's really good like that. But that looks really good. I'm gonna have to try that.
Well, what made me, of course, it's you have to dip it out with a slotted spoon because all the bacon grease that's in there. But what made me think of doing that? I saw a reel of the day where a guy was making keto, his favorite keto meal, and he put Brussels sprouts in like a casserole dish kind of thing, and then he had a wire rack he set in there, and he put strips of bacon on top, and that bacon grease, as it renders, comes down on the Brussels sprouts, and then he has bacon and Brussels sprouts for supper. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I don't have a wire rack I can put in there necessarily, but I could just chop it up and put it in there with it and let it all cook together. And when the bacon, I didn't know how long to cook, but I had it 225 because that's what I was doing my butts on anyway. But I just let it cook until the bacon looked like it was pretty well done. And then Then I took a fork, and the broccoli was pretty tender, so it was pretty good. But like I said, it didn't really taste like broccoli. It tastes like smoke and bacon, which is
even better.
Yeah. So
even better.
Yeah.
Well,
so if you get the health benefits of broccoli, but it tastes like smoke and bacon, that's a win-win-win.
That's really helpful. I mean, for a lot of people, you need to eat some greens, get healthy. Maybe the bacon's not the most healthy, but whatever gives it a little bit better taste. But if you could take
all
the
in
taste
moderation
completely away from broccoli and then eat it like it's something else, would you not want to do that? That's the question.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway,
I guess somebody could make the argument, well, if you have to do all that to broccoli, I just don't think it's going to be worth it anyway, which could be true.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I'd just soon take a Flintstone vitamin and be done with it. So, yeah.
Oh man, well, it's all good and fun.
Did you take Flintstone vitamins when you were growing up, or was that?
I did. Not for a long
past
time.
Your
but
era.
I remember doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean like the gummy ones either. Like we had the ones that was like sidewalk chalk.
Yeah.
Flavored sidewalk chalk.
It was like red and blue and purple and green, and I think there was a yellow one. And we'd get up every morning and take one.
We took ours right before bed. So, yeah, that was a nightly ritual, and we thought that was like, the miracle drug. In fact, that's kind of what we thought was going on when COVID hit, was that we just, as a worldwide population, we quit taking our Flintstone vitamins, and that's what led to a pandemic. So,
yeah, maybe that ought to be a new thing. It's National Bring Flintstones Back Day. The old vitamins.
Probably is. I started following a thing on Instagram where it tells you what all that particular day is being celebrated, and there's literally anywhere from 5 to 10 things every day that's being celebrated.
Sure.
But it is funny, we were mentioning about the whole idea with the festival. Every one of these things, there's a festival. Like here in Martin, Tennessee, we have the soybean festival. And nearby Dresden, where I grew up, they have the Iris Festival because the iris is the state flower in Tennessee. South of us in Sharon, Tennessee, is the Rose of Sharon Days. Further south in Greenfield, where my wife grew up, they have the Fiddlestick Festival, and then they have the Fire Prevention Festival. North of us is Fulton, Kentucky, and South Fulton, Tennessee, the twin cities that are separated by I know you think the twin cities are Minnesota and St. Cloud, but it's not really. It's Fulton and South Fulton. But anyway, they have the Banana Festival, and you're wondering how in the world did somewhere in my neck of the woods end up with a Banana Festival. It's because those bananas would come in New Orleans, and they would ship them to Chicago. And Fulton, South Fulton, was about halfway where they had to stop and re-ice the bananas on the train cars. So they do the world's largest banana pudding up there every year and all that kind of. I mean, there's just everything all around us. It's those kinds of
festival country. That's what that is.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I maybe like out west and up north they do festivals like that too. I'm not sure, but here in the South, everybody has. And there's some famous ones here in Tennessee. There's the R.C. Cola and Moon Pie one. There's the Cornbread Festival. There's, some of those kinds of things. But the Strawberry Festival down in Humboldt. The world's biggest fish fry up in Paris, Tennessee. Yeah.
Yeah, that one is pretty intriguing.
But today is also National Cheddar Fries Day. It's also Volunteer Recognition Day, which in Tennessee, I think every day is Volunteers Recognition Day. But today is National Lookalike Day. I'll come back to that in a minute. It's also Pineapple Upside Down Cake Day, which I love pineapple upside down cake. But
I have not.
Since it is National, do I now?
I have not had one of those in a long time.
Yeah, me either. Too long a time.
The congregation that I grew up in, there were a few ladies that would make that, and I always liked it.
So if you would like to make one, you can send that to Garrett Bernethy, care of Hydro Church of Christ.
You send one my way. We'll do a weekly. We could do a weekly review, taste test.
That's right.
I'll do the pineapple upside down, and we got to have something for Corey. What would you like to test every week?
Oh, well, if I had to eat something every week, it would be banana pudding or cinnamon rolls.
We could have a national testing of banana pudding with Corey. We'll rate it every week, eat it right here, let you know what we think.
Yeah.
There is
send your banana pudding and cinnamon rolls to Corey Sawyers, care of Martin Church of Christ.
Oh, there is speaking of desserts, there's a lady here in Hydro that makes, bar none, the best cherry pie I've ever had in my life.
Really?
The best. I'm not a huge cherry pie person. I like it, but I'm not just a big cherry pie person. I like all kinds of pies, but cherry is just kind of one of those. I'll have it every now and then, whatever. I would eat hers every single meal. It is all homemade. It's probably a something that's been passed down generation to generation. Unbelievable. We were sitting at a baseball game a few weeks ago, and I walked up to her, I said, "You have ruined me." And she looked at me like, "What?" And I said, "I spoke." It was actually at Momentum where you and I were speaking a few weeks ago, and they had that big table full of desserts and all that stuff, and there were several cherry pies, and so I thought, I'm going to get one. Oh my goodness, it wasn't even close. So nothing against any of those cherry pies. I'm so thankful that they made them for us, and it was good, but I told her, I said, "You've ruined every other cherry pie for me." And she laughed but unbelievable. So that could be another taste testing. If you want to send a cherry pie to us for us to rate it, let us know. I mean, we're all about that. Send one to Hydro, one to Martin. Taste testing right here. Real time.
Yeah. The Untied baking section.
People probably listen to the first part of this podcast and are like, what are they doing?
Yeah. Or they just fast forward through the first part of this podcast.
Probably, yeah. Probably just fast forward.
All right, so it's National Lookalike Day. What celebrity have you ever been told you look alike?
I don't know. I don't know if I've ever been told I look like a celebrity.
Well, you're one of a kind. That's good.
I guess so. I mean, I'm not saying
I
just don't remember.
No doppelganger for you.
I don't think so.
That's one of my favorite words that I never get to use. Doppelganger.
You ought to see if you can work doppelganger into your sermon next week.
We had one year at FPTC, we had a bunch of guys that would putting each other up to using a weird word in spoken English. And so I'm like, all right, I've been Mr. Nice Guy too long. Spoken English is fixing to ratchet up now. So anyway.
Oh, it probably wouldn't really be that hard to work in that word. You just have to have the right type of illustration or something. You got to work it in. So it could be done. But if you do decide to do that, you need to let me know, and then we'll...
Mary goes to the tomb and thought that Jesus was a doppelganger for the gardener, rather.
On the road to Emmaus.
Yeah. He looks familiar. Who is this guy?
Who is this guy? Yeah. Be easy to work in.
While traveling across the Sea of Galilee, they saw Casper's doppelganger going across the water. And said, it is a ghost.
He's a ghost. Can you imagine what that would have been like? That's the one, the walking on the water scene from The Chosen is there's a lot of powerful moments in that, but that one, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Have you ever seen the behind the scenes, how they made that too? That's really cool.
Yeah. That was pretty clever.
Yeah, it looks like they're standing on the mats we used to take a nap on in kindergarten.
That's exactly what it looks like. And I don't know how deep that water was, but they had just enough going over those things that, the water's obviously moving, so you could see them, but you really couldn't see it a whole lot because the water was moving. So very clever how they did that.
Yeah. Yeah, they've done a lot of cool, like in season 1, whenever he calls Peter and Andrew and James and John, and they put down their net on the other side and they pull in so many fish that they couldn't, that's actually all CGI fish.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
I didn't know that until I knew that, and then you go back and then you're like, oh yeah, that is. But they were supposed to have real fish, and the truck got lost, and it was delayed, and like, now is when we have to film this scene. So they're asking the CGI guy, can you make a bunch of fish? And he's like, yeah, I think so. So they just kind of winged it. And, I don't know what they did with all the fish that they had ordered that when they finally got there, but
just put them in the lake
or put them in the fryer.
What would have really been funny is you look in there and the fish that are actually in the net are like largemouth bass and crappie and perch and catfish. Like, I don't think those are the fish that were there.
Dude, we saw catfish in the Sea of Galilee.
Did you?
When we were on that boat, yes, there were catfish in the Sea of Galilee.
Nothing.
And I'm thinking, how cruel would that be? You can't eat it under the law of Moses, but there they are, And maybe they weren't there back in the day of Jesus. I don't know, but.
What a thought to think that Peter, Andrew, and James and John could have been mutt-cat fishermen.
Yeah. Or channel cat fishermen.
Channel cat. It's a blue cat.
So.
The fishing stories that'll be told later.
Yeah, really.
But they'll all be true then. Like, oh man, we caught a bunch, but they were only this big.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, yeah. Cool stuff. Hopefully one day I'll be able to go and check all that out. See all the Sea of Galilee, and very cool.
Yep.
Well, speaking of Bible times, we are looking at the Sermon on the Mount. We're in Matthew chapter 5, and we're thinking about these things that Jesus has said in this sermon. And again, if you're just tuning in, we've been introducing the Sermon on the Mount and talking about it over the last few episodes, and just finished up 2 different episodes on the Beatitudes, and looked at all of the different lists that's in here, and how these are things that are referenced to being approved by God and what they actually mean. And so if you missed that, I would like to tune into that. You can certainly go back in the show playlist and check those out. Episodes 2 and 3 are devoted to the Beatitudes here within this sermon. And today we're looking at salt and light, which is just directly following this. And I'll get this right screen here pulled up on our, if you're viewing this on YouTube or Excel TV. And by the way, there's been some trouble getting the last week's episode up on YouTube. So I'll have that up here hopefully pretty soon. So don't worry about that. If you're following there, we'll get that all taken care of. I'm not sure what's going on with it. But here, if you are tuning in with us, you can see we got it up on the screen here. If you're not, we're primarily looking at verses 13 through 16, which simply say this. But, well, let me actually pull up Matthew. You don't want to read 2 Corinthians. How about that? That may be a good start.
I like
Corey.
2 Corinthians. I like 2 Corinthians.
Is great.
Yeah.
It might be a little contrary to what we're reading. All right, here we go. So verses 13 through 16, Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven." So we're in this second section here, and a lot of good stuff going on here, Corey. And again, we're saying beware. A random song may break out at any time. So just giving you stern warning here. But Corey, what are we thinking here as we get into this salt and light section?
Well, it's interesting. I mentioned this before, and I don't remember where I got this, who I got this from, but it's written in the notes in my Bible that this introduction of the sermon starts in verse 3, goes down through verse 20. We looked at the Beatitudes, 3 through 12, which is the righteous person in God's sight. And then this section that we're looking at today, verses 13 through 16, is the righteous example in man's sight. So if we're the kind of person that we've talked about, that God wants us to be his standard of righteousness, verses 3 through 12, then not only does it mean that we are blessed or approved of by God, that we're in a right standing with God, but it also means that now we're set up to be the kind of example to others that he wants us to be. And again, we haven't got to it, but we've mentioned in our overview that verse 20 is the thesis of the sermon. Unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you'll not enter the kingdom of heaven. The Pharisees thought that they were the kind of example to be, that everybody needed to be like them. But as we're going to see throughout this sermon, it was all about show. And the kind of person that's the real example that God wants us to be to others is not the ones that's doing it for show, but they're just living their life for the Lord. And as they're letting their light shine before men, as we're going to see in a little bit, then that allows God to be glorified because they're living a righteous life. People can see that's the kind of life that I need to live as well.
Mm-hmm. And for those watching here, or, well, I guess either way, there seems to be a thread, Corey, as we go throughout this phrase, the kingdom of heaven, is being used several times here. We've got it here. Make sure I'm not missing any. In verse 3, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We have it in verse 10, blessed are those who've been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And then we have, it's worded a little bit differently. Well, I guess it's really just playing off of the idea of heaven. But again, verse 12, rejoice and be glad, your reward is in heaven. So there seems to be a something that's being placed in front of us. And like you said in verse 20, for I say to you that unless your righteousness surpasses the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. So it seems that there's a kind of a thread that's being built on this idea of the kingdom of heaven. Heaven is definitely a hot topic, if you will, within this sermon. And I know that it's not going to be the last time that we run into this phrase within this sermon. So kind of interesting, just as we're just beginning to overview this new section here.
Yeah, there's so many times he mentions, and eventually he's going to get to the point to say, seek first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, but the idea, we think of the church or heaven, but most of the time in the Gospels, when he's mentioning the kingdom of heaven, he's just talking about God's rule and reign, which would include in the church and that type of thing, that Jesus is going to pray, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, that people here accept his rule and reign, but it is an idea that he's trying to help them to see is the importance of allowing God to rule and reign in our lives. And, that's, as you said, it's repeated over and over throughout this entire sermon. There's the Father in heaven, our Heavenly Father, whatever your translation says, that's emphasized through all this. There's the righteousness side of this, and then there's the kingdom of heaven that's being emphasized throughout all this.
Yeah. So would it be safe to say, as we're just kind of, thinking about this, would it be safe to say from your perspective that the kingdom of heaven is a major point that not only Jesus wants to make, but he wants the reader to understand that there is something that's at stake here. There's something that to look forward to here. There's something to truly consider in as you live each and every day. Would this be kind of leading us to that direction, I guess?
Yeah, and the idea of again, are you going to do things the way the scribes and Pharisees have been telling you, or are you doing it the way God says? Who are you allowing to reign over your life?
Right.
When we get into this first big section of the main body of the Sermon on the Mount, it's, you have heard it said, but I say unto you, well, who's been saying that? It's the rabbis, the Pharisees, the scribes, are you going to allow their thought process, their teaching to be what determines how you think and react and act, or are you going to let God be the one that rules in your life? And, not only that he's the standard by which we go, the standard for righteousness and the standard by which we live, but also the way that that's even perceived. I think even in the church, we've been taught our whole lives that God is our Father in heaven and that God is a God of love. But at the same time, we I think emphasize the fact that God is, you got to do right or God's going to punish you. And obviously there's that, behold the goodness and severity of God. I get all that, but almost to the nth degree, that's all we focus on. And, are we thinking of God as standing behind an ironclad door, looking for some technicality to keep us out, this booming voice to keep us out? Or do we see him as our Father in heaven who's wanting to invite us into his home? That's kind of the perspective I think that he's trying to help the people of his day and us, as it's been preserved for us, to see not only the need to follow him, but the why you follow him is because who he is and what he's. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think it plays into a lot of what Paul writes or even what John writes, even in my study that I've recently done, a larger study in Revelation, one of the main reasons that we worship God in general, not only worship God but honor God, but and understand him in the manner that he should be understood, is that he is creator. And because God is creator, and that from that standpoint alone, he is worthy of all worship and all praise. And that really establishes his place in life. In Romans chapter 1, we have that whole section that talks about where the people had the Gentiles in chapter 1, who he is mainly addressing there. They had given up the Creator for creation, basically in way of their worship, and they'd given up Him, and they'd stepped over this line and began worshiping the four-footed animals and all that kind of stuff. And so it seems that if you put together Matthew, Mark, and Luke, especially, that there really is a large push in the preaching of Jesus and the mindset of the writers to establish that God really is above all, Jesus truly is king, and there's an order of things that are being set. In other words, I'm taking the kingdom back. I'm reestablishing my place within the people who have turned away. And I don't, because in here where he's talking about in verse 20, unless you surpass your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and the Pharisees. He's wanting them to break away from those traditional thoughts, from those teachings, from those ideas that have been passed down, because they're not the standard. God is the standard, and God as creator is the one who deserves to be heard above all. And I think that all this is essentially playing into that concept.
Yep, that's exactly right. So this is kind of one of those sections where, like Jesus does often in his teaching, he's going to use some illustrations to make a greater point of, all of that, all those concepts we're talking about. How do you express that in a way that the everyday guy can get that? And Jesus was a master, that he's the master teacher. We try to do that with illustrations or whatever, but we had a guy yesterday in our worship service that led our thoughts in the partaking the Lord's Supper, and he's a big golfer, really good man. And but he did a talking about this last weekend was the Masters, and they talk about it being a tradition like no other, and so he talked comparing that to. I get it's a command, but it's our tradition of taking the Lord's Supper, and it was really, really good. Well, he told me afterwards, he said, I don't know, I felt kind of bad, and he said it a couple times up there, this kind of a silly thing to compare the Lord's Supper to the Masters, but, I'm doing it anyway. But he was telling me afterwards, he said, it's probably a bad thing to do. And I said, no. I said, Jesus talked about farming and shepherding because people were farmers and shepherds back then. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling if Jesus was walking the earth today, he wouldn't give as many farming illustrations because not as many people are farmers. He might be talking about golf or football or smoking meat or, the things that we do, trying to put spiritual things in a sense that we can understand it. And of course, salt and light is still two things that we use and need and understand today. So, again, the way that Jesus frames it is such that, this is deep theology, but he's putting it on the kiddie table, you might say, to where we can all understand it and apply it to our lives.
Yeah. I mean, it being the master teacher, to use something that they're directly using or directly affected by makes complete sense. So we think about examples of that. I don't think, I believe that in certain cases, if he's talking about lambs or sheep or whatever, you're probably hearing them in the background. When he looks over at Jerusalem after he come over the hill and you have the fig tree there, the fig tree has been cursed, it's rotted from the ground up, and they're sitting here looking at this tree that is, this fig tree that is doing that very thing. And he's comparing it to what he's seeing in the background there. Here is the exact same thing. He's using something that they well understand. If we're talking about teachings, even if we're looking at law, Paul does a great job as he's inspired in Romans chapter 7 of sharing things about the law, but he used an illustration of marriage that they very well understood to demonstrate this teaching on the law. And we find that all throughout Scripture, that some of the best ways of teaching are to use the things that people most understand. And I don't think that it's by accident that salt and light are used here, because these are timeless things. They're not just simply governed by one culture or one, time frame throughout history. This is something that touches anybody and everybody. So it is universally understood what these two things are.
Yep, that's exactly right. And so it's one of those, it's kind of hard to to miss the point if you stop and think about what salt does and what it means to us, and light the same way. Kind of hard to miss, what, even so much so that we can sing a song with our children, hide it under a bushel, no, and the kids understand that,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, as we look at salt, which is this first part here, verse 13, you're the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. So, if we're going to play off of this making illustrations, I smoked a brisket this weekend, smoked it for Sunday morning. The first thing that I put on a brisket whenever I start working on it is salt. Now, it'll be mixed with pepper and some garlic as well, but salt is a major player in every seasoning that you have, because salt makes things, or can make things, taste pretty good.
Adds
and
appeal.
there's other applications of that, of course. So if we're looking at what salt actually does, and I realize that if you've ever studied or heard sermons on the Sermon on the Mount, you know that this is one thing that every preacher or teacher will go into. But salt was something that has always been used to make food taste better. Food that is bland, you put a little bit of salt on it, it changes the whole taste of it. So it's a helpful agent for the one who is eating that particular food. Well, we as people, we can be bland. And with a little bit of salt, we can be not salty. If you're salty, if a person's salty, that means that they're kind of grouchy or they're kind of whatever. But this is not leaning us to that direction. It's leaning us to leaving a good taste in somebody's mouth after they have met us or whatever. So in reality, what it's saying is that, when we talk to people, those words leave playing off the idea, they taste good. They leave a good memory. They impact in a really good way. It's pleasing to the ear of those who are listening, and not in the sense that you're tickling the ears of people, but that the words that you say are impactful and leave a sense of truth or positivity or joy or hope or whatever. I think that's kind of what's really in mind here. So I think that's really what Jesus is getting at, is that he's explaining how your words taste to others, how your actions even taste to others. But then on the other end, we know that salt has been historically a preservative. It's a preservative for meats and for other food, and actually a lot of different things that I'm not even aware of. So salt has a number of different things that it's good for. But you can also take it the other way, where if you have too much, it can have the opposite effect. But I don't know, Corey, that's what I've always kind of known this to be, and how I feel contextually what Jesus is getting at. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
First of all, I've never had too much salt. Okay, so I don't know if that's a reality of something that can happen, but I like salty. But you're right, salt adds taste. It makes things better, right? you open up a baked potato and you take a bite and you're like, you add some salt and it's like, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So salt makes things better. Are we making the world around us a better place?
Yeah.
You're the salt of the earth. Salt, as you said, preserves. It saves and preserves. Here in our part of the world, the humidity and all the conditions are just right for curing country hams. And so country ham is something that is prominent around our part of the world. And when we were in Denver, bless their hearts, at Thanksgiving, I'd brought a country home back to Denver from Tennessee, and I don't know if you've ever smoked a whole country ham, but it's phenomenal. But anyway, I'd smoked a whole country ham in addition to a turkey, and I'm trying to tell everybody before we start eating, this is country ham. It's not like regular ham. It's really salty, and everybody's like, listen, we may not be from Tennessee, but we've had ham before. And I'm like, yes, this is not the picnic ham that you've had on Easter. This is country ham, All right, country boy. Well, our city ham's just as good. And I'm like, okay, just go on. So anyway, it was like a pack of wild wolves had gotten, all that was left was the big bone. And there was not one shred of meat anywhere. And, that was at lunch. Halfway through the afternoon, we're watching football, and everybody keeps coming to the kitchen. I don't know why I am so thirsty. And I'm like, because you had country ham, Anyway, you pack that ham and salt, and you didn't have refrigeration, but it would protect it, it would save it, it would preserve it. So are you the one making a difference in saving people? You're the salt of the earth. And then the other thing that salt does is it permeates the whole thing. It's like leaven. It affects the whole thing. You can't say, do you want a slice of country ham? Yeah, but give me the unsalty part. You only put salt on the outside of the ham, but guess what happens? That salt gets pulled through the whole thing. If you're making chili or soup or something like that, and you do put too much salt in it, it calls for 2 teaspoons and you put 2 cups of salt in it. Okay? Well, I can't say, give me a bowl of the unsalty part because it mixes in the whole thing. It affects the whole thing. So are you the one that's affecting others around you? You're the salt of the world. So salt is what saves. That's the idea. Are we helping to save people, to affect people, to make the world a better place? And if salt has lost its saving power, it's not worth anything. Well, that's what salt was designed to do, was those things by God. So when a Christian is not doing the things that we're designed to do by God, then what are we good for? See? And it's a really powerful statement that Jesus is making here about, how are we living our lives, and are we living them in the way that he wants us to live them?
Mm-hmm. That idea of making a difference is, I think kind of the central idea here, that salt makes a difference. I think that, reading different texts, if we become, it says here, if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? When salt loses its taste, it really is no good. It's worthless. It is worth more to be thrown out, and walked on to give you some traction, maybe in a place that's slippery than it is anything. It's absolutely worthless. If we have lost our taste, if we have lost that relationship with God, if we have lost the impact that God has on us, if we have lost our motivation to live faithful, if we have lost this lifestyle, this understanding of salvation, if we are no longer using our life and our gifts and our time for the Lord to share his message, to treat people the right way, to be impacted by the teachings of God, we will become saltless or become tasteless rather. And we won't be able to make a difference. We simply become the same as everybody else. And that is not something that is a desire of God. He wants us to be different. Even the idea of being holy is to be set apart. So being the salt of the earth is like being God's salt amongst all the people. It is you are the one who makes the impact. You're the one who makes the difference and makes the world essentially a better place. You're the one, you've heard that phrase that you might be the only Bible that anybody ever reads. Well, it's a great saying, but I think there is some truth to that idea that if a person has never known Christ, they have never known the Bible, they have no religious background, they're only influenced by the world and what it has to offer, and they're used to all the things that the world has, but then you come along and you talk different, you walk different, you act different, you think different, you teach different, you have different morals, different character, different everything. When that person leaves from meeting you, you have the same impact at that point that Jesus had on everybody whenever he was teaching these words. They looked at Jesus and they were amazed. In Mark 1 and 2, amazed is used over and over again. They were amazed. Why? Because he taught with a different authority. There was something different about him. Well, when we're affected by Christ, we are the difference in other people's lives. And that really does seem to be the whole point. The difference that we can make as God's salt, if you will, we can really do wonderful things to, like the apostles. It says in the book of Acts that they basically turn the world upside down. Well, how do you do that? By being different. Not different in a negative, bad way, but different in God's way. And so it's kind of like 1 Thessalonians 1, you see the impact. Jesus taught the apostles taught the disciples, and it goes on to the church in Thessalonica. Paul, taught the church in Thessalonica. Well, Thessalonica grew, and then they impacted Achaia, and they impacted Macedonia. And so there's this line of impact that goes down, and there was great things that were happening, but that was because they were on fire for the Lord, but they were sharing that difference. They were sharing that teaching that could really be a blessing to others. And so you can see that example essentially of being the salt of the earth. They made their world a better place where they were. And I think that's, a major point. Making a difference is a major point here.
Yeah. And like, even if you go back to the old law, which is what they're under when Jesus is doing all this or teaching all this, and this is Leviticus 2, but in Leviticus 2, he talks about how that their offerings were to have no leaven, but their offerings were to be offered with salt, because it says there that salt was a reminder of the covenant with God. So, like, we think about maybe in Colossians chapter 4 and verse 6, let your speech be always seasoned with salt, gracious seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer every person or whatever. So does the things that we do and the things that we say, are they a reminder? Our speech, is it a reminder? The things we do, is it a reminder of our covenant that we made with God? It shouldn't betray our covenant. The words that we use, the things we do, the things we say, like you think about, like when Peter denies the Lord that third time, so we don't know what words he said or what words he used, but we do know that he showed everybody there that he was not a follower of Jesus by the words that he said. So again, like, how are we going to affect the world? It's that, to be tasteful in this verse context would be showing people by the things we do, the things we say, that we are in a covenant relationship with God. And if we're not doing that, then, you can do good deeds, but nothing that you are going to do in this life is going to last or is really going to matter outside of those eternal things. So no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under the foot of men. It's useless. And again, that's That's his view of what we are if we're living our lives like we're not in a covenant relationship and not showing that covenant relationship to others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's what builds legacy, I guess might be the right word. You said it's something that's to be that leaves a remembrance of others. And, we can think about all kinds of people in our lives, whether it's family or friends or elders or, other people in the church or just people who have impacted us in general. That leaves a good taste in our mouth. And you remember those things. And so that's it. This is about impact. And I don't think that we can come away. We're sitting here talking about someone who lived, Jesus who lived 2,000 years ago, and we're talking about this as if it was yesterday. That's the impact that Jesus had on the world. We study the letters of Paul and act like this happened. These are really important, and the impact that these words from Genesis to Revelation have had on this world. That's what we're talking about. And so, even when I walk into my grandparents' house, I see my grandpa's chair there. He's no longer here, but his legacy is, his memory is, the things that we did together. It's all there, and I can look at his chair and I remember that. I look at his Bible I have in my office. I remember those things. It's the impact that you have on others that makes a true difference. And of course, we're taking this from the positive standpoint. You can do this from a negative standpoint, but what Jesus is talking about is all positive and is spiritual and is right living and right ways. So that's what we're getting at. And then of course he leads to this next thought, which is, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and he gives light to all who are in the house. So he makes this main point: let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. So a transition here that goes from salt, which leaves an impact, to light that should be a reflection of God. And so if we're living in the right way, why would we keep that a secret? Why would we not let that light shine to other people so that they could be impacted by the life that we live?
Yeah. And one more thing before we move off of salt, I was thinking, because I love watching the Food Network and competition cooking shows, and how many times have you seen the judges say, this is a great dish, presentation's wonderful, it looks good, it's yada, yada, but it just needed more salt, And I'm thinking, how sad would it be if we got before the judge of all time, the judge, and he said, your life looked good and there was, whatever, but you just needed more salt in your life. And that would be sad. But anyway, But here we get to the light of the world. And again, like you said, how ridiculous would it be to light a lamp, hide it under a bushel?
No.
I'm going to let it shine. So how dumb is it for Christians to cloak themselves in anonymity and not let anyone else see what Christ is, what he's done in our lives, what truth is all about? And I get that people will do that in terms of, I don't want to receive the glory, I want God to get the glory. But if we cloak it in anonymity, or as Nemo would say, anonymity, then, no one knows. Somebody did a good deed, but there's no connection made. And so, if we're going to be the light of the world, we have to let this little Christian light of mine, I'm going to let it shine all around the neighborhood. I'm going to let it shine. We got to let it shine. And now he says that, we're to be a light, a representative of truth and purity and holiness, but there's a major difference in shining your light and letting your light shine.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got. Jesus is going to, chapter 6, he's going to devote a huge section of the sermon on people that are doing things in order to be seen of men. He's saying, let your light shine in such a way that they see your good works, but do it in such a way that God gets the glory, not you get the glory. That's our goal, is to cast the light upon God. Kind of be like the moon. We say the moon is shining down on us, but we know it's not really the moon. It's not producing light. It's just reflecting the light of the sun. Yeah. That's what we've got to be to the earth, is reflect the light of the sun, S-O-N, reflect the light of the sun, and let him get the glory. But the only way we can do that is if we reflect the light so that people can see our good works, if that makes sense.
Well, John said, walk in the light as he is in the light. So that idea of reflection, I really do believe, and that's how I have understood it, that while we are quote unquote lights of the world, we really are, and I love how you said that, we're reflections of light, reflections of his light, because this is not a teaching about self-promotion. It's a teaching about promoting the teachings of God, the impact of God. It's promoting the family of God, the kingdom. That's what we're promoting here. So I don't want anybody to leave this conversation and think, well, we've got to, that teaching where, don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing and how it's secretive. And I understand that perspective where we don't, doing things for people when they don't really know and blessing others in that way, that's a great thing. But that's not really what we're talking about here. If all these good things happen in the world and nobody knows who you are, then what impact have you had? Everybody's just simply left guessing. Man, I really wish I knew who did these good things. Well, we got no idea. They're off in the in the caves, and they're hiding, and nobody has any idea who it is. Well, that doesn't do any good either. To receive recognition for something good that has been done is not a bad thing. Where I think that we get confused on that is in the heart of the individual. If your purpose is to be seen by other men, and you are the one who wants to be your name to be thrown out there, and you want to be in the limelight, look what I have done. All right, we have a heart issue that's going on. That's where all of that comes into play. But there's nothing wrong with being seen in the good things that you're doing, because you are a representative, in a sense, of the church itself. You're a representative of the kingdom. And by the good things that you do, Peter says, others may glorify God in the day of visitation. Now, that's in reference to how you act within suffering, but that's still the same thing. So the things that you do, the way you shine, the way you act, the way that you live, the things that you do for other people, people are seeing the effect of what Christ has had on you, and you're demonstrating that same action and love and kindness and compassion toward others. And I think that that's a good thing. Even when we talk about this kind of idea, Paul says in 1 Timothy chapter 3, in verse 15, really 14 and 15, I'm writing these things. So here's a purpose statement. I'm writing these things to you, hoping to come to you before long. But in case I am delayed, I write so that you will know how one ought to conduct themselves in the household of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and support of truth. So in doing these things, you are demonstrating and supporting that truth and how you live, and you're promoting all of these good things and what you do. It's not necessarily your congregation. We're not selling, and we don't like that word marketing, but you are a billboard for the church and for God based on how you live your life and reflect that light. And so you can think about it however you want, but the more you act like God, think like Christ, the more people are going to see that. And it can, again, we go to this idea of making a difference.
Yep. And the two things I'll say, and then I'll be done. But first of all, the idea of what's in their heart, it's why it's a danger for us to say, well, Garrett was just doing that trying to draw attention to himself. I don't know that.
Right.
I don't know that your heart, Jesus did, and he could make that. Now, you can see it by the fruit they bear, what kind of tree it is, and maybe over time you see that, but that's hard to. We better be careful about. He'll talk about this later on in chapter 7 about this unrighteous judgment that we will sometimes use. But the other thing is you're talking about the position, or it's not that I do it because I want to be on a pedestal or want to be put in a lofty position, but how many times has God elevated people to a lofty position so that they could have a larger influence? Yeah. Like Daniel and like Joseph and those kinds of people that had they not been, they weren't seeking to glorify themselves. How many times does Joseph or Daniel, for example, someone say they have the power to interpret dreams, and how many times they turn around and say, nope, this is God in doing this. Mm-hmm. They're giving the glory to God. Yeah. But in doing what they're doing, then they're put into a position where they're able to influence a lot more people and even the kings of the countries in which they're living. And so sometimes God can put, maybe put us in a position or a situation or whatever that will allow us to influence more people. But I really do believe that it's kind of like God blesses us. He blesses people with money and means that he knows he can trust to use them to get his will accomplished. I think he does that with position as well sometimes. Mm-hmm. And, if it never comes, that's fine. I'm fine with doing what I do for the cause of Christ, for the kingdom. In the dark corner that I'm in, I'll be the light in that little dark corner that no one else hardly sees. But if he puts me, up on top of a lamp pole or, whatever, then I'm going to shine my light there. Whatever platform he gives me, it's like, this podcast. It's allowing us to have, hopefully, an opportunity to teach others the Word of God that we, would not normally. I'm not preaching every week to 40 different countries. Right. In Martin, Tennessee. So, it's a matter of using whatever situation he puts you in, but always turn it towards him. And we get so, for the best of reasons, I think, the best hearts of people. I'm not trying to say they're doing it for negative things, but I don't want the pedestal or the platform or people to know who I am because I want to give God the credit. Well, when you're put in those positions, you do give God the credit, but sometimes that allows you to do other things whenever you see those doors that he opens. I don't know if all that makes sense or if I'm just rambling, but that's the two things I wanted to say.
Well, it
hide it under a bushel? No.
It does. And when it's not a bad thing to be well known. It's not a bad thing to have or be put in a position to have a great impact on people. Now, it can be used for a bad thing if you're not careful. And
if that's your goal, that's what you're seeking, then that's bad. But again, that goes back to that heart thing that that's between you and God.
Right. But, equally on the other side, this is why self-evaluation is so important. If you're not evaluating your heart, evaluating your spiritual life, and holding yourself up to the text and saying, all right, am I lining up here? Then you have it's going to be a lot easier to float away, if you will, from that perspective. But it's not necessarily a bad thing to be put in a position where you do have an impact and can make an impact on a whole lot of people. That's not a bad thing. I mean, even whenever we read through, keep bringing up the Gospel of Mark because I've been preaching through Mark, but we find it, it's all talking about the same story, and we find it here in the book of Matthew too, and we'll highlight those as we go through it. But the people were so amazed at what Jesus was doing that he couldn't even stay in the city anymore. He had to go into unpopulated places. Now, if we're talking about it's sinful to be known by a lot of people, well, then Jesus is the chief of sinners at that point because he was known by everybody. And everybody wanted to see him, and everybody wanted to talk to him. Even in the house of Capernaum, whenever he comes back to Capernaum and he's teaching there, and that's the scene where they let the man through the roof and all that kind of stuff, you have the house that's completely full. And when I say everybody wanted to hear what he had to say, I mean everybody wanted to hear what he had to say, because it was the scribes who were sitting on the floor at his feet, listening and watching what he was saying. They wanted to know what he had to say. So his popularity, if you will, was through the roof. Well, if any of us, whether you're listening to us or whether it's us or anybody else, gets to a point where that popularity is very high, that's not a bad thing. You can have a great impact on people no matter where you are, whether it's the neighbor, whether it's 1 million people on the world. The idea here is about the impact that you can make based on the impact that God has made on you. And so we're trying to shine that light as a reflection and live out our life for Jesus, for all of this, so that other souls can be saved. And if you're put in a position like Joseph was, second command over all the land there around Egypt and the surrounding areas, so be it. Use that for the glory of God, and don't be afraid if people know who you are. Just keep your heart right. Mm-hmm. That's the key here. Nothing needs to... God can put you in a place, and he can take you out of a place. And so we've got to remember that if you've been put in a place where you can make a great impact for the kingdom of God, man, that's great. God's using you in that way. Don't ruin it. And don't do anything that has negative effects on the kingdom. Everything you say, everything you do may not be the most popular, but if you're doing things in accordance with the way that God wants them to be done, then maybe he's using you for greater things than you even know about. And that goes for anybody. And again, this is for the 3 people that are around you or the 3 million people that are around you. It doesn't really matter. So if people know who you are and what you're doing, that's not bad. That's good. And if they're seeing it, it's because you're showing it. And I think we have to be okay with that.
Yep. So you're the salt of the earth and you are the light of the world. And we sing some songs. There's some old songs. I want to think, I think there's a song, you are the salt of the earth, maybe. But anyway, we sing songs like that, old hymns, and then we sing, This Little Christian Light of Mine with our children at Vacation Bible School or in Bible class, because it's deep theology, but it's put on a level that we can all understand, because that's the beauty of the way that Jesus is teaching. You want to be righteous the way that God says be righteous? Well, be salt and be light, and have the ability to influence the world and make it a better place by showing them Jesus, and be the light that people can walk in to get to him. And if you do that, that's what God expects all of us to do.
That's right. That's right. Maybe the key here is make an impact. Jesus has impacted our life. Therefore, we need to impact the lives of others.
Yep.
Well, Corey, this has been another great study. I love thinking about these things with you and exploring these ideas. When people say, and I realize that there are portions of Scripture that deserve more study, more thought, more things. But when you come down to the basic teachings of the text, and even this sermon, which should be the most complex if you really think about it, nobody knows more than Christ does. This should be very complicated, but it's not. It is very easy. Anybody can understand this. So if you're one who is thinking, well, the Bible's just too hard for me to understand, take a few minutes and just read through this, and what you'll find is that it really isn't. It's very easy to understand. It's logical, it's applicational, it's theological, it's all these things mixed up in this one batch that is designed to help you grow spiritually in a relationship with God and live your life out in a way that God desires for you to live. I know that this may be a little bit, well, I understand why it's being said, but I think there's a lot of application in this. You know, Paul said that God's not a God of confusion. He's the God of peace. I realize contextually where that's being said, there's a few things going on, but that statement really is true. He's not given us a word that's so complex we can't understand. He wants us to understand because he wants us to follow. He wants us to be saved. He wants to be our God, and he wants us to be his people. And we really need to keep that in mind. So, Corey, any closing thoughts before we wrap this thing up for the week?
Let the lower lights be burning. Trim your feeble lamp, my brother. Some poor sailor tempest tossed, trying now to make the harbor, in the darkness may be lost.
You heard it here, folks. You heard it here. The wonderful...
So just be a lower light this week.
A lower light.
Be a lower light. Be salty and a lower light.
Be salty and lighty in the world.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Untied podcast with the shenanigans and things from Corey and I. We love spending time together, and we love spending time with you. And we hope that everything that we're talking about, studying, thinking about, is a blessing to you in your own study. And we hope that you're taking these things with you and doing your own studies and contemplating this in your own walk, in your own life as you go throughout it. We just hope that all of this helps you in a really great way. And a lot of things that are life-changing in this sermon, and that's one of the reasons why we know it's worth talking and thinking about. Again, we're grateful for you joining us today for another episode of the Untied podcast, and we're grateful for our time together. And again, we hope that you'll like, share, follow, and subscribe to help this podcast to grow. The more it grows, the more it helps the network. And we do want you to check out all the other podcasts that are on the network. Just head to excelstillmore.net, go to the Excel Pod, and you can see all the great stuff that's there. Weekly podcasts that have all kinds of things in them. So we just hope that these things will bless you. So until next time, we hope that the Lord will continue to bless you in your daily walk with him. And we hope that you will stay untied.